That should help. That should help with everybody as I go to multiple platforms. So we've got that fixed. So now, okay, so where were we? 90,000 verified signatures, and it took them approximately 120,000 signatures to get there because we're at a 75% verification rate. 25% of signatures get thrown out. Signatures don't match. They're not a registered voter, or for whatever reason. So that's what we're sitting at. Now, the second thing you need to understand is that there is a lag in verification. Signatures are not verified the same day that they are turned in. We're looking at a lag of probably 5-7 days, somewhere along those lines. And so it's safe to assume that there are probably anywhere between 15 and 20,000 signatures already in the pipeline. So we have 90,000 verified signatures, but it took 120,000 to get there, and we've got 15 to 20,000 in the pipeline. All right. So that puts us at the low end, 135K to 140K. So this is what was already in the system. 135 to 140,000 were already in the system. So then they say 200,000 signatures. They say 200,000. Well, that would only be 60,000 additional signatures. I think that they probably got to 230,000, maybe 250,000 on the outside. So if they got to 250,000, we already had 140,000, between 135 and 140,000 in the pipeline. So if it's anywhere between 60,000 and 150,000, then what we're looking at is 195K to what is 140, and then another 100 and what did I say? Up to 250. So that's another 110K. So that would put us at 250K. This is what we're dealing with right here as I back up a little bit. I'll explain this to you. Bring my microphone over so you can hear me. So what we've got, this was the verified signatures, but they needed this many to get there. And then, assuming 15 to 20,000 in the pipeline, puts us here, and then they could put anywhere between 60,000 and, up to 100 and some thousand. So let's assume somewhere there's anywhere between 195,000 in the pipeline and 250,000 in the pipeline. That's the numbers that I think we're dealing with here. And it's fairly easy to make that assumption based on what we know in the past. So that's where we are. We have 100 anywhere. And so when they say we got over 200,000 or many tens of thousands above, and they got to 230,000 signatures, 250,000 signatures, we're talking anywhere between an additional 60,000 and 100 and some thousand signatures. And then if you throw 75% of those out, then this is where things get interesting. And let me explain that in a second. So does that make sense? I'm not good at math, but I'm hoping that that makes sense for everybody. Trying to look at some comments, questions, people leaving comments on the live. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, anything you want to say, please leave it in the chat and I will get to it. So that's the first thing we need to understand. They already had about 140,000 signatures in the pipeline. Most of those had gone through the verification process. So when they say they got over 200,000, we're looking at somewhere maybe around 60,000 up to, 90, 100,000 more. 60 to 100,000 more signatures. Maybe 110,000 more. with, 140,000 already in the pipeline. So that means if we've already gone through 120,000, that means we've got 130,000 left, probably at the high end, to verify. And if we're verifying that at a 75% rate, and I'm terrible at math, so let me pull out my handy dandy calculator. At the high end, I'm thinking maybe 82 to 100,000 more verified signatures. And that's at the high end. And what does that mean? It means that they most likely will hit that statewide goal of 140,748 signatures. I don't think that there's going to be any question that they will reach that goal if the numbers that they reported yesterday pan out. That's the first thing we need to, that's what's going to happen. Brandon on TikTok says, when I heard that this morning, my first thought was fraud. And as I explained earlier, that first thought is wrong. It's not fraud. It's just the calendar. It's a very boring, explanation, but it is just the calendar. There's no fraud. There's no conspiracy. Signatures are the signatures, and now they have to go through the verification process. Now, there was fraud. What's not helping them with the public perception is there was apparently some fraud in Utah County in which they turned a bunch of signature packets over to the district attorney in Utah County, and there's an ongoing criminal investigation happening. That does not help the public perception of this. But those signatures are gone. They're not going to be included in any of the totals because they are apparently fraudulent, or the fraudulent signatures have already been rejected. So if you hear someone saying fraud, conspiracy, they made it up, they're just picking, none of that is true. It's just the calendar. It's just the way that this sort of thing works out. This is an expansive campaign. The same thing happened in 2018. The same thing happened with the HB 267 referendum. They had it statewide, and you have to get these packets out to people and then bring them back. So there's no fraud, there's no conspiracy. It's a boring explanation as to what happened. And as I said before, it's almost certain that they are going to hit the statewide requirement of 140,748 signatures. If they don't with as many signatures, that's an embarrassment. So they're going to hit that. Expect them to hit it. Eric Biggert says could be fraud in other counties that haven't disclosed it during open investigation. Yes, but if they have, those signatures have already been excluded. Okay, they've already been excluded. There are no fraudulent signatures getting through the process. The verified signature number is those signatures have been verified, and I don't think there's any place for that conspiratorial thinking that there's this big pool of fraudulent signatures out there. If there are, there's going to be a criminal investigation, and that's going to hurt their efforts to try to get on the ballot. It's really hard to get these signatures through the verification process. So the second part of this, you have to meet two requirements in order to get on the ballot in Utah. One, statewide, it's almost certain they will get there. The second is you have to hit a geographical goal. And that is you need signatures from 8% of registered voters in 26 of the state's 29 Senate districts. And those are signature requirements ranging from like 5,000 to a couple thousand in the Senate districts. As of Friday, they had cleared the bar in 4 of them. And they need 22 more. And that's where this is going to make the ballot or not make the ballot. That's what's going to happen here. As I wrote today at utahpolitics.news, the 25 districts that have not reached the goal yet, they need to get 22 more, meaning they can only fail in 3 of them. The 25 districts that have not met the goal, they need a total of 55,648 more signatures. That's more than what they need statewide because they are over the goal in 4 Senate districts. So they need just over 55,000 more signatures in these 25 districts to qualify. Assuming that they got approximately 100,000 signatures in Sunday's dump, that, that's an average of about 4,000 signatures unverified. Remember that. They're not verified yet. But that's an average of 4,000 in each of those 25 districts that have not qualified yet. That would be enough to carry most of them to the finish line. But remember, they have to be verified, and we're looking at about a 75% acceptance rate, meaning about 25% are thrown out for whatever reason. And there are 5 Senate districts that need over 3,000 signatures. Now, county clerks have 21 days from when the signatures were turned in. So those signatures are now in the pipeline. They can't add any more. And they're going to start verifying what was already in the pipeline and these new ones starting on Tuesday. When will we know? It could be quick. I'm sure that they will add a number of districts very quickly. As I'm looking at this, let me sort these here. So they've reached the goal in 4 districts. There are 2 districts that are at 80% of the total of what they need to qualify. I suspect those will probably come off the board pretty quickly. Then there are 7 more that are at 60% or above. Following that, in the 50s, 6 more at 50 or above. And then this is where it's, as they say in the English Premier League, squeaky bum time. 4 Senate districts are at 40%, are under 50%, between 40 and 50. There are then 5 Senate districts that are under 40%, and 1 Senate district is only at 26%. And remember, they can only fail in 3 of them. They have to hit 22 more, or they do not qualify for the ballot. Chris Turner says, I came in late. How much more time do they have? They cannot submit any more signatures. Now it's the verification process. Clerks have 21 days from when they were turned in to verify them. The final day is March 7th. Alan Oram says, do you believe they met the threshold for each district? I don't know. It's going to be close. The large amount of signatures they got on the final day suggests that it's going to be close. Now, I've seen questions from everyone. Why did they go to the Utah Supreme Court and try to get an extension? I think there's a couple of things at play here. I actually asked Rob Axson about that. As you may know, may or may not know, last week on Wednesday, Utahns for Representative Government, that's the group that's behind this effort. It's really just the leaders of the Utah Republican Party. Utahns for Representative Government went to the Utah Supreme Court, and they asked for a 3-day extension on the deadline. And they asked for a couple of things. And the reasons they stated there were two main reasons that they stated they would like an extension. One, they cited the campaign of harassment and violence against their signature gatherers. They estimated approximately 300 signatures were stolen or destroyed, and the people who had already signed the petition, it would be illegal for them to sign again, which is true. You can't sign a petition twice, even though those signatures are gone. But if those packets somehow showed up, then they wouldn't be able to turn those in again. So that's the first reason. And the second reason is they argued that because the deadline fell on a Sunday, the custom in Utah is that you extend it to the next working day, the next business day, which would be Tuesday, which is why they were asking for the Tuesday deadline. And the Utah Supreme Court said, why are you waiting until a couple of days before the deadline to ask for this extension? So no, and they denied that, and they weren't really nice about it. Now, the easiest leap that one could make when you see this campaign go to the Utah Supreme Court at the last second and ask for an extension is, I guess there's a couple of things that you could try to assume here. One, they either are nowhere close to their goal, which we've already seen that they were. That's not true. That they weren't close to their goal and they were trying to avoid embarrassment. Or two, which I think, or you might be able to, or you might say to yourself, they think that they're close, but they want to build in a cushion. I think the second one is probably more plausible argument to make. But I think there's another thing going on here, and it's something that Rob Axson said to me today when I was asking him about this. I said to him, why did you go to the Utah Supreme Court when you had been expressing confidence about, turning in enough signatures to reach the ballot? Why did you go to the Utah Supreme Court? And he said this is a quote, there were some important things we felt we needed to raise while they were still open issues. The violence we experienced, for example, and the moving the deadline and the deadline falling on a Sunday. And that got my attention. Him saying we needed to raise while they were still open issues. And I mean, that makes sense because it's hard for you to come back and say we need a deadline when the deadline's already passed. You're trying to do that ahead of time. But I wonder if this is an attempt to set themselves up for a possible lawsuit if they fall short. They already tried it once with the courts. They went to the courts once and said, hey, the deadline, it should go to the next business day on Tuesday. If they fall short in a couple of districts, it would be very easy to make the argument, depending on how far short they fall. But if they don't make the 26 districts, if they fall short on the geographic requirement, it would be quite easy to go to the court and say, if they had actually moved the deadline to the next business day, which is the custom here in Utah, which has happened many times in the past, if they had moved that deadline like we asked, we probably would have made it to the deadline. So I wonder if maybe they're trying to set up a lawsuit or seed the ground for a lawsuit in case they fall short. I asked Axson that, and he said I'm reading too much into it, and maybe I am. But it's a tactic that losing ballot initiatives go to the courts. That's happened many, many, many times that in the past. We've seen that happen. Losing initiative campaigns in Utah routinely sue to extend deadlines or force courts to accept signatures. That's another lawsuit a potential lawsuit that could be filed, saying that they were throwing out too many signatures. They threw out too many of them. They weren't following the guidelines, whatever. So watch for that if they don't make it. Right now, I'm assuming that they're going to be extremely close or have crossed the finish line, and this will be on the ballot. But watch that, because going to the Utah Supreme Court to raise these issues, it makes sense because you can't ask for a deadline extension after the deadline's already passed. You have to do that ahead of time. But to raise these issues and get it in a court record that you tried to make this argument beforehand, it might be setting something up down the line, a contingency. And maybe Rob Axson is correct, and I'm reading way too much into this. I don't know. It's possible, but, you know, that's just something to think about. Trying to go through some of these questions here. Let's look. Nathan on TikTok says 75% seems like a lot to be thrown out. No, 75% are accepted. 25% are thrown out. That's what we've been seeing pretty much across the board statewide. I've seen stats from different counties, and this is what Rob Axson told me today. So it looks like it's about 75%. Nicole said they have been lying to people trying to gather signatures. How do they get held accountable? There's nothing in state law that says you have to be truthful when you are collecting signatures. The only thing state law says is the person who's signing it has to read the entire ballot initiative and then say that they understand what they're signing. That's the only thing in state law. So, you know, if you're demanding accountability, if you're and you're relying on, I mean, and there have been multiple reports that there was misleading pitches used, misleading arguments used, trying to, or the misleading people who sign these petitions about what it actually does. There's nothing in the law that says they can't do that. It's kind of incumbent on you to be an informed voter. I mean, I know that sounds kind of harsh, but that's the way it is. So they can't do that. Gay Trekkie on TikTok says, you were just saying the other day they didn't have these additional signatures, and now they do. I never said they didn't have these additional signatures. I was going off of the signatures that had already been verified. But this last minute dump, I was always expecting a large number of signatures. I probably wasn't expecting what they turned in on Sunday, which was probably somewhere between 60,000 and 100 or just over 100,000. But I never said they didn't have these signatures. I was looking at the trends from what we were seeing verified, and there's a big difference between the two of those. Solus Ginger, I believe, on TikTok says, where do you think they got all the signatures from, and do you think most of them will be verified? I think they got the signatures from Utah voters, and as I've been saying before, I think probably around 75% of them will be verified, maybe more. All these campaigns have internal verification procedures. So they're trying to make sure that it's a person's a registered voter, because you have to be a registered voter. They obviously don't get to see the signatures and compare it to what's available, but they do a lot of verification before they turn them in. And, you know, once they get to the signature verification process, maybe the signatures don't match, they don't match enough, and that's why they get rejected. Ant Squad on Instagram says they hadn't turned in packets in weeks. They dumped at the end. They've been turning in packets. Like I explained before, there is a lag between when signatures are turned in and when they're verified. It's easy to assume, and I don't think that you'd be wrong to assume that there are already 15 to 20,000 signatures in the pipeline waiting to be verified. They're not verified the same day. There's like a 5 to 7 day lag at this point. I'm sure that lag will shorten because now the clerks are the ones who are on the clock. Some people are asking, what is the process for getting your name taken off the signature? what you need to do is you need to go to the county clerk. Online, I'm sure there's a number of places online that have put the signatures, the places. Let me start that again. There's a number of places online that I believe have posted the list of initiative signers. And I'm sure that you can find those. I'm not going to promote any one site over the other. Those are activist sites. The best place to go is to vote.utah.gov. I'm bringing that up now. Vote.utah.gov. On the bottom left-hand side, there is a box that says additional resources for voters. You click on that. The next page that comes up, below it, it says groups and data, where it says initiatives and referenda. Click on that. Then at the bottom of the page that pops up, you'll see statewide initiative and referendum information, and then a subheading that says 2025 statewide initiative and referendum information. You have to click on that and then click on repeal of the Independent Redistricting Commission and Standards Act direct initiative. That's the first one in the list. You click on that one. Under signature gathering, you will then see click here to view the list of signers. And then you'll be able to see all of the people who have signed the petition and had their signature verified. That's how you check if your name's on it. Everybody who has signed the petition will eventually end up on this list. Once your name is posted online, you have 45 days to remove it from the list, and you have to go to the county clerk. It's a very complicated process. It takes a while. I mean, they don't make this thing easy to find on the vote.utah.gov website, but hopefully I just walked you through that enough so you can see that and look at that information. So I know there have been a lot of people who are looking for that. But yeah, they got a lot of signatures. They turned in a lot of signatures on Sunday, and you shouldn't be surprised by that. That is the process. There's really nothing surprising at all. You have to expect that there's going to be a large number of signatures turned in at the end because that's the deadline. And as I explained before, were they sandbagging? Maybe a little bit, maybe to build tension, but also, once a name goes on a petition, you have 30 days to turn in that entire booklet. So I just wanted to, I think it's important to come on and explain that to people. I think we are, again, frozen up. I'm not sure what is happening. I'm trying to fix this out. I'm using a new